Hiring the wrong executive costs you time and money. Leveraging work psychology, Spirit Consulting helps you hire the right executive so you can focus on growing your business. For a free quote, visit spiritmco.com. Enjoy the show.
Well, welcome back to the Tips for Team Building podcast, where our mission is to inspire and propel others along in their leadership journeys. I'm your host, Jaden Smith, and so excited to welcome Ryan Culkin to the show. Ryan, thank you so much for taking the time this morning. For those who don't know you, we always start the podcast with an easy question. Who are you?
Who am I? Yeah, it's a great question. I would say that, I'm a family man. I'm a father of two. Got a amazing wife, and so I'm a husband, a counselor, and I just love relationships. Love I vibe off of energy from my friends, and coaching is I was I'm an ex-athlete, and so I love getting back to the athletic realm through coaching. Not doing any coaching right now, but definitely hope to get back into it soon. That's probably, a good glimpse of who I am. I'm an operator. I love kind of just, solution focused mindsets where we give me a task to attack. And I love to just kind of, plan with others to have a good resolution for, in my specific situation, for our clinicians at Thriveworks.
Awesome. And, talking through those relationships and coaching, I'm sure there's plenty of that in your role as the chief counseling officer at Thriveworks. So could you tell the audience a little bit more about how you got into the leadership position you're in today and kind of what that encompasses?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. Early, I was actually one of those fortunate people that kind of knew what I wanted to do actually in high school, which is not always the case. I definitely had a passion for helping people, and specific helping kids and teens that I felt like were just dealt a hard hand. I went on a mission trip in high school to Guatemala, and I was in this Mayan village, and I just my heart broke for all these kids that were just needed a second chance. And so I knew from there that I really wanted to work with kids and teens, and I knew the best way to do that was to go into mental health. I didn't know what that meant at the time. I didn't know if that meant a master's degree or whatever. I just knew I wanted to help people. So I went to Liberty University, played football there, and was able to also get my undergraduate degree in psychology and stayed there and got my master's in counseling, and then practiced for about 5-6 years. And kind of throughout that time, was really gaining a distrust and almost a disgust with the mental health industry. It was at that time, clinicians were burning out left and right. And that was the way it was taught to me in college, and even through my first couple employers, was burnout is inevitable. It's going to happen, and when it does, that's when you go to the admin side of the field. And I just thought that was sort of ridiculous. I just thought, like, if our doctors and our dentists and all our healthcare lines inevitably burned out, what would the world look like? But for counselors, it was like this, that's normal. And so I really did not like that. And so at that time, I was actually in this crossroads of, like, do I want to just not do counseling? You had companies that were focused on productivity so much, and non-clinical departments being run by clinical people. It just didn't make sense in terms of operational efficiencies. That sort of mindset I love of, let's do the best we can to support clinicians, and probably the best way to do that is to have professionals in that realm running that department. And so I was seriously thinking about just going into ops somewhere else. And then I knew AJ Centaur, who was our CEO at the time and is our founder, through a colleague at a different job. And there was a Thriveworks here in Lynchburg where I'm at. And I walked by it one night and I was like, gosh, this is how counseling's supposed to be. I was with my wife. I remember it's in our downtown area. And I looked in there, I was like, this looks like a coffee shop. Like it's got super cool furniture. Sound machines aren't playing. It's like Alexa's playing, Coldplay's on. You know what I mean? And so it's like, this is the kind of counseling I want to be a part of. And so I actually applied just randomly to a resident position, which is basically like an intern in mental health world, very similar to a resident in medical sense, but not as obviously intense. And I got the job. I was the first resident ever hired for Thriveworks. And I had no idea what it meant, but I was just so happy to be a part of Thriveworks because I could tell something was different. Like they had a marketing team and they focused on SEO, and it wasn't no one had a license in that department. It was people that went to school for marketing, and so I just really had a respect for their operations and how they were trying to run themselves like a Fortune 500 company, but they're in mental health. And at that time, there wasn't a lot of people doing that. It was like what I was talking about before, or, healthcare through, hospitals or residential facilities. And there was this energy, and I was like, I have to be part of this. This could be where I actually can, execute my passions and also make sure that like I feel good about the business model, basically, right? And so I was a resident there for only like a short amount of time, like about 6 months. Even though I was the first resident here, they weren't ready to start sending me clients because they were still figuring that out. So I only had a few amount of clients. And then we started this position called the regional clinic director. It was the first of its kind, and it was basically a way of setting up the clinicians for success through advocacy and making sure that all departments were united and moving in the right direction to make sure the clinics and clinicians were able to be successful with their clients. And so I got that role and loved it. It was I had my background as a therapist, and I was able to, know the position they were in, understand how to support them before they even knew they needed support, right? And then also marry that with what's the goal of the company, and how can I get it to where the clinicians and the company feel like it's a good decision for them, right? And so, I loved that role. I was in that role for about a year and a half. And then I was promoted to be our executive clinic director to oversee all clinicians nationwide. And then lastly, I was promoted to chief counseling officer about 2 years ago now. And I love it. I basically find success in having unbelievable directors that work for me, that are just leaders, motivators, and I partner with other departments here at Thriveworks and making sure that, very commonly they'll basically ask me, hey, does this make sense? This is what we would do if we weren't in a mental health company, but does this make sense for mental health? And yes or no. And I'm able to give feedback. Let's change this. That word doesn't really make sense. And so, but I love that. It's basically, we're trying to be a very successful and operationally run company, but also carry out this mission of let's help people live happy and successful lives, and have that clinical piece. And so that's definitely what's attracted and kept me here at Thriveworks. Is we're not a tech company that's trying to utilize mental health or anything like that. We are a mental health company founded by a licensed therapist. We have licensed therapists on our executive management team, and we really try to emphasize that we are people helping people. And I just love that, and it's the best of both worlds for me in terms of exercise my passions and making sure that my skills are being able to be utilized as an operator.
Yeah, I love that, and lots to unpack there. I love how you kind of get to serve as that checks and balance, of hey, does this make sense from a clinical perspective as well? Because I think that you so often see, especially in healthcare, and especially those areas of healthcare that are private equity or venture capital backed, those high growth, very rapid moving, organizations, is sometimes it is all about those KPIs, the metrics, and the ROI that can, come back from that investment. And being able to have kind of the checks and balances of okay, Ryan, yes or no, does this make sense? That's awesome. And, just kind of envy envy, and I'm sure, many people, in the audience do, the fact that you knew what you wanted to do in high school. I think that so many of us go through that, like that struggle of thinking we know what we want to do, then you start doing it, then you change it, and then you change it again, and do a couple different things before you really find that passion. So kudos to you for having that, like that moment of reflection early on to be able to find that. And then lastly, one of the things that really struck a chord that you shared, Ryan, was that trip to Guatemala, and how that, like, just made you, kind of like, it just increased that desire to help people. I had a similar experience in studying abroad in Costa Rica, where we went into like a rural part of the country and taught dental hygiene and English to a school out there. And it was just such a rewarding experience, but such an eye-opening experience as well. Like, you don't, like, when we're living in America, like, we don't recognize, like, so many people complain about this, that, and another. And don't get me wrong, like, not everything's perfect, right? Like, there are challenges, but then, like, it's just such a, like, a humbling moment to be like, to go into an area like that and just like appreciate what you have and use those skills and resources that you have to be able to help others. So I really, really love that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That was exactly what it was. It was an eye-opening moment for me. I felt so fortunate compared to what the people I was working with, and I just felt like I just felt like kids and teens, it was like they were dealt a bad hand, and it wasn't their fault. But I didn't want them to basically feel like you have to be that you're set, that you're stuck, right? You can actually still be successful, and you have the skills and strengths to do that. And maybe I can just help guide you a little bit, but it's them doing the work, right? So I just couldn't help but stop thinking about that. And then, obviously, I guess something I mentioned was, I don't practice anymore. I kind of was able to figure, and it was a confusing time for me. It's like, why was I, given these passions and heart for helping people? But then I quickly realized that, like I said, that just the operations in the industry at that time were not moving in the right direction for the clinicians. And the clinicians are like, that's like, who's helping these people? And if we have great clinicians that feel empowered at their role, like, you're gonna have no problem having clients come. And so, I quickly realized that full-time therapy was not for me. I'm way too impatient. I'm very solution focused, like I mentioned. And so, like, that can work sometimes, but most time it's not the best. I would say, counseling relationship. So I find my passion now in equipping clinicians to be successful through operational best practices. Make sure we hire excellent clinical people and clinical gurus, as we would call them. But helping them as the field modernizes and evolves. They're not getting those updates, right? They're not seeing those things. We don't get taught anything in college around operational best practices. It's just clinical. And so that's why I'm always like, when someone opens up their own private practice, like, how did you gain that small business knowledge, right? Which is tough. It's tough. We don't get that, but that's kind of like the end all goal, is like, own my own private practice. And so, that's where we kind of come in. We're like, give you that feeling of you owning your own private practice, but support you with, state of the art sort of department, marketing, credentialing, licensing, that sort of thing.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And, I think it's just one of those things, like you said, where it just, like, it empowers the clinicians to focus on what they went to school for. Like, they didn't focus on running payroll and, doing hiring and stuff like that. They went to school to be a clinician and to help people. So just to be able to have that structure within the organization, to do that is just so powerful. And, I think that starts, Ryan, with building up, relationships and building up trust and, getting people to buy into that. And you mentioned earlier, in describing who you were, one of the things that you said was, I'm a relationship builder. So just want to kind of hear, more about how you go about building relationships as a leader.
Yeah, no, it's a great question. I think for me, I've always tried to well, I've learned that I need to adapt to the way the person I'm working with and how they want to be led, right? And how they want to build relationships. If you go in with this mindset of like, I'm the leader, you adapt to me, you're going to be quickly humbled. And that's just not the way it is anymore. And so I love that challenge of like, I got to get to know this person, right? And remembering those things. Like I think that if you can remember the real talk times that you have with your colleagues, supervisees, and you can bring it back up in a future long, 2 months down the road, that goes such a long way with them, and letting them know you care. And so I kind of think of it like, I really struggle with the pandemic because I love in person. I was the first person back in the office. I buzz off people's energy. And so, I mean, it's kind of like those moments where you're talking to someone and they say something and you're like, oh, this is real. And you close the laptop, right? Like that's the thing. Like you close the laptop and that's like saying like, okay, let's talk. Well, I can't really have that anymore because still a lot of my working relationships through the laptop. But basically like the close the laptop type of conversations of let's have a real conversation and really make them feel safe about disclosing things that probably would have been seen as, oh, that's bad boundaries, like 5 years ago, or let's keep professional, right? Like I can't do the whole like so serious, like no joking. I have to like, in a sense, love the people I work with. And I'm not going to be able to have that type of working relationship with them if I don't get to know them. And so, I think, letting people feel safe and disclosing those things, and also make them not feel incompetent for showing their weaknesses. I think that's huge. Obviously, if it's something that's coming up all the time, it's like, okay, maybe we need to talk about how we can have a better, relationship here or better boundaries, but that's never the case. Like we're a counseling company, mental health company. Why would we shy away from having mental health safety amongst our employees? And we know that, the biggest indicator of success in the counseling journey is that relationship. If you can build a relationship, you're really going to see a higher chance of success. And so if they're confiding with me, that's showing that the relationship is improving, and that's what I want. And that's what my, directors want with their employees. And so, I think just trying to have those real talk conversations as much as possible has been something that I've found success with in just building relationships and just having a genuine interest. If you actually don't think of it as like, this is a ploy or a play to get better in my position or, be more successful, that's not going to work. Like, that's just like, it's just fake. Right. But if you can actually be like, I want to get to know this person. I want to know them, who they are, their family, their friends, their social life. If you enjoy the people you work with, I think that you just have way more success in building those relationships. And that's definitely how I've found success with it. Sometimes I'm not good at it all the time, right? Like, things are busy, and sometimes I'll end a meeting and I'll reach out to that person like, I was brutal there. I was working while you were talking to me. Like, let's do this over again. But realizing the importance of that, I think, is important. And I think a lot of people just miss out on that opportunity of like, so focused on getting the job done itself and not thinking about how you're getting the job done. And that's through the people. And so, I guess that's my sort of long-winded answer to your question of how I look at building relationships. I'm sure there's things I'm missing, but that's what definitely comes to mind when I hear that question.
Have you been feeling unfulfilled? You want to be happy, but just continue to struggle. One of the best ways to experience joy is by caring for the homeless. A charity I've grown to love, River of Light, food rescues 1 million meals per year for the needy in Chicago. Imagine how that makes you feel, knowing that you're helping feed children and veterans. To make a tax-deductible donation, visit riveroflightchicago.org. Again, riveroflightchicago.org. No one should go to bed hungry.
Yeah, absolutely. And one analogy that I've I've used before on a previous episode, and I think that it's so relevant here, is like you were kind of talking about boundaries and getting to like know the genuine person, and like things that might have been like, taboo to talk about like 5 years ago or like not, within the professional setting. And, the, kind of example that I use is that like there is kind of that old mindset of like, you've got professional, personal, and then you have like the Great Wall of China between the two, and there's no overlap, nothing breezes over. But realistically, we have to realize that it's probably more like a chain link fence. The wind blows and things are coming from one side to another, and that's going to allow you to build deeper relationships, but then it also allows you to like recognize when people are struggling. Like it may not be professionally related, it may be personally related, right? Or like when you do give them, when they're very stressed out at work, that also affects their personal life, and kind of like recognizing that, and building relationships and just being mindful and like how you lead, because that's probably more realistic than, the big great wall that you put between the two.
Absolutely. Yep. No, for sure.
So Ryan, you have a very important job at Thriveworks, serving as the chief counseling officer and, trying to push, business objectives forward, but then also, this responsibility to build relationships and build culture, with the clinicians and within the practices. So want to kind of hear, like, how do you balance, when that does conflict with each other, when you have this responsibility to be the culture champion, but then you also have like the responsibility to move business objectives forward?
Yeah, that's a great question. And that I'm also fortunate here. And let me tell you why. Our CEO now and our CEO before has always had the mindset and mission of like, we want to do what's best for the client. I know that sounds super, just in a way like cliche, but it's just, it's felt here. And so when all of our executives have that mindset of what is best for the clinician, what is best for the client, how can we support them, what is best for our billing team, what's best for our scheduling team, how can we make sure that they are successful? Like, it's really easy to mend that with your mid-level managers, or because they feel it. And if there was a tougher spot, it's just the honesty piece, right? Like, I just tell them straight up why we're doing what we're doing and how that helps our mission. And if I can tie everything back to core values and mission, and everyone believes in the core values and mission, it's easier to get that across, right? And so I think also one thing I've found a lot of success with, and I've learned the hard way, is communicating better, right? So things that I'm working on with the executive team, making sure that I'm not blindsiding the mid-level managers when they're rolled out, like giving them lots of insight on what we're working on and sort of just walking the talk, right? If we can talk about all these things, but they don't see the actual wins, that's tough. And so, when we go through tougher times here at Thriveworks, which, every company does, when they see, oh, we're actually moving towards that and actually improving things, it goes a long way with the clinicians and with all the employees. Like, oh, they understood that, they saw it, and even though they recognized that it was they dropped the ball there, they're coming back quickly with a plan that's going to improve the mission of Thriveworks. And so, yeah, I think it would be a struggle for me, I think, if the clinical filter wasn't there, right? I think that'd be very tough, because I can understand the draw of why you'd want to be a mental health company right now. It's a great place to be. But if you don't understand how a clinician and client works, you would be pushing things that actually make sense numbers wise, right? It's like, yeah, that you should do that. But like, if you didn't know that the impact that's going to have, then yeah, you'd have to have these tough conversations. Like, how am I going to get this across to someone that's just not going to roll, right? And so luckily, I've very rarely been put in those situations to where I feel like I've never have I been put in a situation where I feel like we're going in the opposite direction of our mission. And yeah, I'm just super fortunate. I don't know how I would handle that situation. And I mean, I probably just wouldn't be a part of something like that, because I think your company's mission is the DNA and who you are as a person, and when it comes to who you are as a company, same way. So yeah, I guess I don't have a great answer for that around, except for like, if you do feel like it's something that's going to maybe not be received well, be honest and hear it, and give them a safe space to give their feedback, right? Build safety and really make sure that you show vulnerability in those situations. Because if you don't, you'll definitely feel it one way or another.
Yeah, and I love that. I think I think just providing, like you said, providing the information, but providing the why and then tying it back. I think that's where like a lot of people struggle, is they're just like, hey, we're doing this because X, Y, and Z. And maybe they do provide the why, but maybe that why doesn't align with the mission or the values. So just finding ways to, even if it is something that's different, it's a change, it's something that might not be, popular right away, showing, the why and how it ties in, long term, I think is so important and great advice. So thanks for sharing that, Ryan.
Yeah.
So as Thriveworks has grown and you have grown, in your career at Thriveworks, I'm sure that, nothing's ever changed. No, I'm just kidding. I'm sure there's been, many times throughout the years that like you've been able to practice change management. So can you tell us, maybe about a time that you rolled out a new initiative, how you were able to gain that buy-in and how you were able to deal with team members who were maybe reluctant to that change?
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, I think change management is really, it's an evolution. Like, you see a ton of it, like when we were in the bootstrapping days, right? Where it's just like, make it happen was like running through my DNA, right? And it's like, you're always trying to improve things, because it's just, we started off as like a 5-department company, and now I probably have like 10 departments, right? And so it's like, I think that you really want to find a balance though of how much change you do, because too much great change is not good for a company in my mind, because you're constantly just like changing things up. And so I think that, if I were to think of how much change I'd want, it's like maybe 1 or 2 things a month. That's pushing it though, in my mind, unless there's things that are like on fire, right? And so I think when you're looking at change management, it's like, and new as compared to existing improvements, it's like, is this a bells and whistle, or is this a broken system that needs to be fixed ASAP, and that will require more urgency? The way we look at change management here is to fully understand the problem, or the reason for the change management. So, I think a lot of times, and I'm guilty myself, I think I know the answer to why something's broken, especially if it has to do with clinicians or clients. I've learned that as we've gotten bigger, that's not always the case. And getting the clinicians' feedback is huge. Getting the clients' feedback, surveys, finding out actually what needs to be improved is huge. So exhaustive discovery. And even though that took a while for me to get used to, because in the old days, it was like, no, I want to change this now. I want to fix it now, right? But it's like, that's not always the best thing to do, right? And so fully understanding the issue, or the problem statement, basically, and then developing a great plan and making sure everyone is involved that needs to be involved. That's something that I would sometimes forget, or we would forget here at Thriveworks or any company. It's like, oh, I didn't realize how it's going to impact you guys. I should have, contributed, or got you in the contributed column there, and then rolling it out in a way that, like, it goes back to what I was talking about, the walking your talk, right? And showing them that you're improving it. That's sort of how we've done it in the past. I think when we feel like hesitancy or no buy-in, I want to understand. I've always told my directors, like, if you don't believe in what I'm saying, let's hash it out. Not that I want to change your mind, but I just know that if you don't believe in something that you're doing as a manager, it's going to be really hard to get buy-in from your people, the people that report to you. right?
Right.
That's why I have had success, is because like I was able to believe in what we were doing. And then that belief, it's just infectious. It goes everywhere. And so I love those moments of like, okay, you don't feel good about this. Let's talk about it. And a lot of times it's mostly just confusion, not understanding what's going on. And so I think, yeah, just really having like a real talk moment again around where is this coming from? Let's talk about it. Why do you feel this way? And not like, hey, you just need to get over it, because that's not going to have an impact. I want everyone to believe in what we're doing. And because I just know how impactful it is when you're trying to spread that across a company. So yeah, just offer that safe place for them to give feedback. And then sometimes I learn from them. Oh, that's a great point. Right. And so go back to the if there's a task force that's working on it, hey, this is feedback we heard. Can we get this in version 1 or is this version 2? Usually it's version 2 because we don't want to delay something, but that's good enough, right? It's like knowing that your feedback was received and it's actually something we think is going to actually improve what we're trying to roll out. That's going in version 2 for sure. If we can get it in the MVP, that's awesome, but sometimes that can be tough.
Yeah, love that. And I think that, that's a powerful reminder as well. I think that, you spoke to earlier how you're very like solutions oriented, and most people that, get into these, executive level seats, like you get into that level because you are very like, pushing the needle, very much solutions and problem solving focus, and very like ambitious and driven in that way. And just kind of recognizing that like, that's great in doses, but that like, just kind of recognizing that like you can't be doing that all the time, or else like too many changes just creates confusion. It creates, people not being, as bought in. It creates just like, almost like it's almost like diluting the mission a little bit, right? Because it's like, what is our mission anymore? Because we keep changing things, right? So like, just being like mindful of that, and kind of like harboring in your own kind of ambitious nature in that way.
Yeah, well, and new initiatives have no proof, right? So you actually don't know if it's going to work. Whereas in improving existing processes, like the impact that at least it's having. Right. So,
Right.
You probably received well when you improve it, but a new thing could be a hit or a miss. Right. And so I do think great companies are built upon having good new initiatives. You have to take those, you have to do that, but you just want to you have more, there's more security improving current processes because the impact they're going to have, what impact that's going to have on the company.
Yeah. Yeah. So want to flip the, kind of the topic a little bit. And I think that, we've talked about kind of like culture, relationships, and, like change management. Want to talk a little bit kind of about performance management and your kind of approach there. And, I think that as a trained counselor and clinician, you're kind of drawn here by this like natural inclination to want to help people. As a leader, if we, like it's kind of like drawing that like fine line, because sometimes as a leader, if we like just want to continuously help, like it can just, blind the facts of a situation as well, right? Like there's only so much that we can do. We can take you, to the, to the pond, but we can't make you drink the water. So, this inclination to, give support can sometimes be, a lost cause for someone who might be in the wrong seat on the bus, or just not a fit on the bus in general. So how do you as a leader differentiate, Ryan, like whether a team member needs additional support, whether they're in the wrong seat, or whether they just like simply shouldn't be on the bus?
Yeah, that's a great question. Well, I think that it goes back to the recruiting piece there. I love recruiting. I love interviewing. I love asking tough questions. I want to see as much of the person as I can, then see the skill. And so I think when it comes to putting someone in the bus, it's really around culture and who they are as a person. The seat is more like, more related to the skill. And that can be tougher to obviously see in an interview, right? I think that for me, I always like to give them a chance to voice their own goals. And so maybe they're super off track with a company metric. Well, great. Well, what do you think you can accomplish? And then see if that happens. That's really been big for me to do they have the capacity to do it? We know they probably want to do it, but do they have the capacity to do it, and capacity to sort of be able to have discretion around what they're telling what their goal is, and then accomplish that? Because then it puts in their own hands, right? It's like, okay, you're right. You have some good excuses for why you didn't accomplish your metrics. What can you accomplish in your mind? And then if they do it, it's like, awesome. There we go. Great. If not, then it's like, okay, what went wrong? And hearing that, I think I struggle sometimes with excuses. And probably, that's probably just something that was infused in me earlier in my work career and also as an athlete, it's like excuses don't really work. They don't it's like, own it. Right. And I try to still have that, like with like a extreme ownership leadership, style of like, if we're not successful, that's on me first. Right. Always. Like, I'm not gonna, but I think giving them the chance to talk about it and then seeing how they do and see how they respond, that's where they really get to see, like, are they in the right seat? I'm trying to think of experiences like that. Yeah. I mean, we've had, people that are probably better clinically and not so much operationally. So maybe it's looking at putting them in a position of mid-level management around operations into mid-level management around learning or clinical learning. But yeah, I mean, I think it's, you'll know, I love, if I felt like they weren't in the right seat, it's like, well, what are you good at? Like, what do you want to be a part of? And seeing that if that's open here at Thriveworks, or seeing if that's something that I think they can do. Right. But yeah, I think that, just going back to what, the beginning there is really around putting it on them to see what they can accomplish. And then that shows me tons of color around, does this person have the capacity to do it?
Yeah, no, I think that's great. Like, just holding, giving them the chance to voice the reasons or, why they feel like they weren't successful, and then just holding them accountable to goals set. I think that's so important. Like, you see so many times in organizations where like goals are set by the leaders, right? And like the team members, the mid-level managers, whatever, it may be in that case, like, don't have as much say in that goal. And so to be able to like say, hey, this is your goal and you're owning it, I think is just so powerful to then say, okay, like, you didn't accomplish it. You set the goal. So like, what's going on here? And, gives you kind of like some good insight there. So, Ryan, into, in today's, just economic and employment, market and kind of the conditions, retaining staff is just, so crucial. Every company, every healthcare company, and I'm sure it's no different for mental health, is, facing challenges in that way with, whether it be recruitment, retention, et cetera. So want to kind of hear, I guess, your advice or kind of your best practice and what you consider to be most important in retaining staff, within your organization.
Yeah, this is gonna sound really redundant. I mean, obviously, you gotta stay competitive, right? You gotta, compensation wise and benefits wise and support wise. But saying that's all even, or even maybe a little lower. I'd say it's even a little lower than the competition. I think, like I said, there's some redundancy here. Belief in the mission, great culture, making sure you are putting people in the right seat, right? Like, someone's going to stay in the position if they're good at the position. Right. So that's really important. That's why I still actually am in the interviews for our clinician managers, because it's just so important to me and to the company that person is great at leading and motivating and advocating for their clinicians. And then lastly, it's that building the relationships piece. So everything we've already touched on, sadly, is kind of my mindset around retention. I can't tell you how many times, even in Thriveworks' darkest moments, we've had clinicians say, like, I believe in this company. Like, I'm going to give you guys a chance, right? Or, I want to be a part of this, right? And so, like, gosh, that goes so far, and that's all the time back to mission, right? And so I think that if you can, and if you're fortunate to be a part of a company where the mission that you put on your website, because it sounds great, is actually the goal of the CEO, of the board, of the leadership team, then your retention is going to be way better already, automatically. And so, and I think that there's just a lot of employees that are not fortunate enough to be a part of a company like that. And so, yeah, I don't know if you want to dig deeper anymore there, but it's those 4 things that we've already talked about around mission, putting people in the right seat, building relationships, and just building a safe culture around your people.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's a good way to kind of, wrap up the episode and kind of bring it all, back together of what we've talked about, Ryan, is in one final kind of question. So Ryan, if people were, kind of moved or driven, by your, wisdom that you've shared today, or examples that you've shared, or, just are looking to network and build out their own skills, how can people reach out to you?
Probably LinkedIn, probably the best. That's probably where I'm most active and okay to accept people that I don't really know. I'm not a social influencer or anything like that. So LinkedIn's usually where I do most of my networking, and love to hear. I love connecting with other companies and kind of the roles I'm in, and hear what they're facing, hear the challenges they're facing, what's the cool things they're working on and trying to accomplish. And obviously love hearing from clinicians. It's still one of my favorite things to do. Whenever I interview for a position that is a clinician going to the admin side of the field, I love it, because it's like I get to meet the people that are actually, helping the people. And so, if clinicians obviously wanted to get to know kind of what Thriveworks is about, I love to talk to them on LinkedIn as well.
Awesome. And we will link your LinkedIn profile to the show, so that way people can easily access that. Ryan, just want to say thank you so much for being a guest on the Tips for Team Building podcast. I enjoyed the opportunity to connect with you. Hope that your wisdom shared just inspires our audience. I'm sure that it will, and look forward to continuing the dialogue.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for having me.
Thanks for tuning in to the Tips for Team Building podcast, where we propel others along in their leadership journeys. If you enjoyed the show, would you please subscribe and leave a review wherever you listened? You can also visit www.spiritmco.com to find out more about how Spirit Consulting inspires virtuous leadership. We'll see you next time.